It's noisy, huh? Sorry. Is that better? Okay. So I'm going to pick up from the passage previously. I don't have to read it. It's from last week, but it's basically right at the beginning where Manjushri Bodhisattva is asking Enlightenment Leader Bodhisattva these questions. The essence of this is that given why the mind is a single thing, and it's not different among Buddhas or Bodhisattvas or sages or ordinary people. All living beings in the 10 realms have the same mind, and then the difference is there's so many differences. I mean, the 10 realms themselves, or the 6 paths, incredibly different between the hells, animals, goas, people, asuras, and the devas of the gods. But even in the sage realm you have, so the Manjushri is asking Enlightenment Leader Bodhisattva, how does this happen? How do you explain this? We could just look, of course, at the differences among people in the ordinary human realm and ask, how do we explain this? And then he asks a series of questions. But basically, the heart of this is why, the answer is, of course, karma. Karma is the dynamic determining mechanism of all these differences. And then he asks this question, why are we not aware of it? Why don't we see it? It's so powerful, it's so ever-present, it's so strong. And yet, for the most part, we don't acknowledge it, we don't recognize it. And when things happen, we usually attribute it to fate, to misfortune, to good fortune, to luck, to chance. What else? The stars, astrology. Anything else we got? We had, the primary determining causations of human destiny are what? Anybody else? Did we miss any?
You know, one could do a Marxist class story about a class struggle.
What's that? Oh.
Marxist class.
Yeah, it's a result of class struggle, and depending on what class we are, we either get the short end or the long end of the stick. You can go, basically, these are called theories of reductionism, reducing human behavior to, oh, here we go, let's go. So we got Marx. How about Freud? Freud doesn't do it in economics, he does it to the id, the ego, and the superego, okay. Then there's that guy called Darwin. Okay, so then you have Darwin, all of it's determined by genes and evolution, right? What else do we have? Well, that's a pretty good sample right there. But usually if we take responsibility for our experiences in our lives, we usually only weigh in on the good part. It's like whatever good happens to me is because I'm really brilliant, smart, and lucky. And when it's bad, it's somebody else's fault, all the way up to the heavens, or somebody else. So karma here is really important. This passage of text is extremely important. Karma actually is presented here as one term. I don't know what Chinese are using here. Let's see. I think they're using ye, right? Bao and ye. So bao is the retribution and ye is the karma. Although it appears as one term, it's actually composed of three things. There is the cetana, which is the intentional action, and it has to be intentional. And the Buddha says in another passage, I say to you, bhikkhus, karma is intentional action is karma. So it doesn't just mean action. It means willful, deliberate, intentional action. Then, and that can be either good or bad, for want of a, and let's just not nuance it too fine, wholesome or unwholesome, healthy or unhealthy, conducive to awakening or the opposite. And the one that's wholesome and conducive to awakening is called kushala. So it's kushala cetana. And the one that is not is called akusala. Very good. Your Sanskrit, better than mine. Okay. Even a child can understand this. They won't understand kushala, akusala unless they're coming from that background, but they understand good or bad. And so what happens is, generally, deeds intentionally done, once done, do not vanish or perish without some trace. There's both an effect and accountability. Those two things are going on. So all morally determinate volitional actions create a potential to bring forth results. It's morally, volitional, intentional. This moral part is really key to understanding the Buddhist karma. It has to be in the realm of ethical, moral conduct to be generating this karma. That doesn't say there's not results from actions that aren't this way, but they're not the determining factors of our experience and our destiny. So all these morally, volitional, determinate actions can bring forth results. And those results occur usually in two phases. One, something called a maturing or a ripening of those results. It's not just immediate that it happens, but it can be slower. It can ripen. So there's not an immediate result from an action necessarily. It can be. There can be, we call it instant karma. I mean, it sounds like instant coffee, but it means that it's happening right on the heels of the action. Generally speaking, though, because karma and all the concomitant factors, mental, social, whatnot, that go into the mix of all the things we do, it doesn't happen at once. It takes a long time for these things to work out. The Buddha once gave a comparison. He said, if you take a teaspoon of salt and put it in a thimble and drink it with water, it's going to be extremely salty. If you take a teaspoon of salt and put it in a huge reservoir, you hardly know the difference. So the same action, depending on the water of our accumulated karma, can have different results. So when it's ripening, it's called vipaka. That's the Sanskrit word for it. And when it actually comes to fruition, it's called phala, fruit. So karma is this capacity of our deeds to generate morally appropriate results. Again, these are appropriate to the causes. They aren't necessarily arbitrary. They're not arbitrary results, nor are they necessarily punitive results in the idea that there's someone judging and punishing. So they're either good or bad, but they come about naturally from the seeds that are planted. And when these external and internal conditions are suitable, that seed ripens into vipaka, and then the corresponding fruit. And it rebounds upon us for good, harm, depending on the moral quality, the original action. Now, the Buddha was very clear in saying it can result, the return, both good and unwholesome, can return in this life. You can actually see the fruits of something in this life. Or it can happen in next life or in future lives. So the expanse of the return of this is long or short depending on all these different causes and factors. But as long as we remain in samsara, any stored up karma will be capable of ripening so long it has not produced its results. So there's a saying that the actions of karma that we create are not off by an inch, and when the causes and conditions are ripe, the retribution follows, and it's not off by a hair. So this becomes difficult sometimes when we think we got away with something, or somebody else got away with something, or we didn't get a just return on something good we did, because it's not so simple as one for one. There are tens of thousands of other factors that balance off with that one. But generally, your tendency wants to be to just keep planting good seeds, wholesome intention. And it occurs with three levels. It occurs with what you do, what you say, so it's action. I mean, it's physical, it's verbal, but also mental. So mental thoughts, emotions, feelings, intentionally let go, either for good or bad, have a corresponding reverberation. It's not that just because you only think it and let it work inside, that it doesn't have a corresponding formative effect on your person. I mean, we know this, right? If you dwell on your feelings and so forth, for a while they germinate and they actually transform you, even if you don't necessarily act or say anything. In some ways, they're the most powerful. The most powerful because sometimes they're the most hidden, the least obvious, and maybe with no check or balance. If we say something, we get a check or balance, right? Somebody can say, hey, you shouldn't say that, or yeah, that was good, that was a nice thing to say. But inside, the only monitor is you. And the self-lifeguard is not necessarily a good one all the time. Anyway, there's a wonderful passage, lest you think, oh, this is just sort of a notion that's coming out of the Mahayana. This is embedded right into the teachings throughout the Buddhist tradition. The one I'm thinking of, if you haven't read it, it's a really good, I'm going to mention some works tonight that are really good reading on this area, but certainly take a look at the Dhammapada. This is a very accessible, it comes in verses, and you can just take a verse at a day. You can take one verse a day and go through. I don't know how many there are. There's probably 84 or something like that.
I thought it was 200 something.
How many?
I thought 200 something.
200 something. It comes in, there's commentary to it, but it's very straightforward and easy. The passage I'm going to read to you now is right from the first, what's called the twin verses. So this is the first passage, and it really describes this. All that we experience is preceded by, and this is heart-mind. I'm going to do heart and mind, not either or. All that we experience is preceded by heart-mind. It's ruled by the heart-mind, made of the heart-mind. If you speak or act with a corrupted heart-mind, suffering follows you as the wheel of a cart follows the track of an ox that pulls it. So it's a vivid metaphor. the cart follows, the wheel of the cart turns in a path being pulled by the bull or the ox. And the ox, of course, is the karma. And then the second part of this says, all that we experience is preceded, that's why they're called the twin verses, there's two. All that we experience is preceded by the heart-mind, ruled by the heart-mind, created by the heart-mind. If you speak and act with a calm, and I'm going to add this translation, clear conscience, bright heart-mind. And the Pali for this is pasanina, and it means both clarity of conscience and brightness of intent. If you act in that way, then happiness follows you like a shadow that never leaves. So it gives two examples, and it's balancing. It's saying karma is not just unwholesome action or bad retribution that comes. All that is good and happy and complete and satisfying in our lives, internally, psychologically, emotionally, with our relationships, and even in our larger natural world and setting, the environment we live in, is the result of karma. So it's got two sides to it. So if I just kind of summarize, one way of positing this is agency. Everybody know what I mean by agency? It's kind of a contemporary. What is agency? Not insurance agency, but like agency in a philosophical sense.
Like make your own decisions.
If you have agency, you are making your own decisions. If your parents have agency, they're making decisions for you, right? If the government has agency, they're making decisions for you. I just got my tax documents to sign. I am the agent of signing them, but now they have agency over me if they want to come after me. Fortunately, I'm on the low of the totem pole. But unfortunately, that's usually who they come after. Anyhow, so agency is sort of the active element. What is determining, in control, the agent of something? So in karma, agency resides with the individual. Agency resides with the individual. It is not in the hands of gods or demons. It's not in the hands of fate or impersonal forces like the stars or all the reductionism we did here before. Agency resides. So you are, in a sense, whoopee, you are totally free. Totally free. And unfortunately, you are also totally responsible because these two go hand in hand. So you have radical freedom, but you also have radical responsibility. So my teacher used to say it's a mature teaching, and I think it's right, because you have to have a certain amount of maturity to buy into the idea that you are in control of your life and your situation, especially after a certain age. You start making your own decisions and whatnot. So you're radically free, radically responsible. It's mature in the sense that it doesn't allow for transferring that agency to someone else or transferring the blame or benefits to someone else. So in short, actions give results and their results follow, and this is really important, a discernible pattern. So discernible in the sense that if it's wholesome and clear conscience and bright, then the results will follow a discernible pattern. They will match up. Like cause, so effect. As effect, you can reverse engineer and say there must have been this cause. So which end you're on? If you start thinking, I'm going to do something, if it's bright and clear conscience and wholesome, you can know in a discernible way that it's going to produce those results. The opposite is true. But also sometimes you can look at the effects where something's happening and you don't know. And then you can go and say, if this is the effect, it must have had a like cause. So if my life is short and I have much illness, then it's likely the cause of that was the taking of life or harming of life. I mean, I'm just quoting right from the text. This is how it works. So it says, if you take life, kill, harm others, the retribution will be rebirth in the 6 paths, usually the 3 evil paths. But once you're in the human realm, your life will be short and you'll have many illnesses. And it goes through the 10 goods and the 10 evils in this way. This is another chapter of the Avatamsaka. So it's very descriptive. Yes?
Didn't you also say that there are other factors than karma to determine what actually happens?
Like?
So that means if my life is short, it doesn't mean necessarily I did something bad, but there are other factors like biological.
Like what?
Or
Not really. Not according to these teachings. The one exception that's given that I've seen is that a kind of illness comes. Like you get a cold or a fever or a flu or something like this, and the Buddha was clear that these are circumstantial things that are not necessarily the result of karma. But the goodness of even your moods and your emotions are karmically determined. Now, karmically determined, you have to think about as formative. This is like clay you shape. It's not like it's a done deal that falls out of the blue. So it's an evolving, formative process we're engaged in, rather than a this and that kind of thing. But I would be remiss if I said to you, your biology even is necessarily not karmic. That wouldn't be my understanding.
or when you grew up.
Where you grow up and your environmental thing is called, let's see, dependent retribution. Proper retribution is your body, your feelings, your thoughts, and whatnot. Dependent retribution is the environmental circumstances you find yourself in. So this is a very thorough explanation. Even worlds themselves, this planet we're living on, is a result of the collective karma of the living beings in this world. And the Avatamsaka says these worlds come into being by karma, they're sustained by karma, they go bad or keep going by karma, and they keep coming around again. So this is from the micro down to the cells of the body, to the macro, and all worlds. The dynamic, formative, determining power, if you will, is karma. This is a very karmic-centered system. It doesn't mean you have to accept this as faith. You can play around with it, you can think around, but basically it's giving you not just a theory, but a ground of spiritually informed fact that comes from observations that sages have made from beginning this time almost, about when they get into deep states of trying to fathom where is this all coming from, what's this about, including understanding past lives. And part of the Buddha's awakening experience was when he got so deep into causation that he could see not just his present life, but past lives. He realized that all his paths of previous rebirth, all the places he had been born, all the individuals he had met and so forth, was all karmically determined. You have from this, if you want, sometimes you can read the Jataka stories, which are the stories of the Buddha's past lives. And you can see in those, at times he was an animal, at times he was male, at times he was female, at times he was royal, sometimes he was a beggar, and so on and so forth. He remembered and saw these, and seeing these directly through the awakened mind, he understood exactly how powerful and determinate this system is. So this is where it comes from. It's not like a theological speculation, but you cannot necessarily just, quote, believe it until you test it out and find it for yourself. Hence the exhortation to test this out and know this for yourself, which is the third turning of the Four Truths. So all I can say is that's what it's presented as. My own experience confirms it, but my own experience is not vast and unlimited. But from what I've experienced so far, it works. Because it has a discernible pattern, it's really important because then you can develop a skill to be working with it. And so one of the whole points of self-cultivation is to develop a sensitivity and mastery over causality, control over the determining forces of your life. And the simple thing is Shila, Samadhi, then Prajna. Or expanded, that's the Eightfold Path, right conduct, right thought, and so on forth. So this is actually the dynamic. You're not only the agent, but you have a mechanism you can use. Because if you're just the agent without a mechanism, it's helter-skelter. I mean, you could try this or try that, but the actual guidance of precepts, concentration, and insight, that constant back and forth of looking and examining, makes agency meaningful as opposed to a joke or cruel joke. Yeah, you're radically free and you're also radically responsible. And how does the car work? I don't know, figure it out. No, it actually gives you the manual of how you might direct this. Some results are more desirable than others. But by observing one's mistakes and one's, how shall I say, efficacious actions, and learning from them, you can use that knowledge more skillfully day by day to increase the good and decrease the unwholesome. I will say too, there's a very interesting thing that happens. You take the precepts, and these become just the basic ground from wholesomeness. No killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, and not getting drunk, stoned, or whatnot. Okay? From there, you can pretty much get a handle on your thoughts, your words, and your deeds. They're not going to go far astray. Now, that's not perfect, but that's a good beginning. That's like the sine qua non, without which nothing else. And you can take larger precepts. You can take the Bodhisattva precepts, which become much more refined and nuanced in terms of giving guidance to sort of karmic activity. But there's another thing that's very interesting, is that you can affect or ameliorate or shift to some degree the intensity of karma through countervailing karma. For example, the killing and taking of life, you can countervail by liberating life. So it doesn't mean you just stop killing, but you find ways to liberate life. I mean, there's all kinds. Obviously, becoming a vegetarian is a way that you don't have to go out and carry signs and posters, and just you end up liberating life by not eating it. Okay, and you say, well, if I don't eat it, somebody will. Don't go there. This is demand, what is it, supply and demand. There was a story I remember my teacher was telling where the two guys die and they go and they're getting evaluated by King Yama. And King Yama says, well, you ate a lot of animals. That's pretty heavy karma. Your return on this is not good. And he said, yeah, but the only reason I ate it is because the butcher cut it up and it was all there in the shop and somebody had to do it. And so the butcher was there, and the King Yama says to the butcher, you see what he just said? And the butcher said, yeah, but if he didn't want it, I wouldn't cut it up. So they're like going back and forth. So you can see it as a story, but you can also see this doesn't work through rationalization. There's no like defense attorney you call forth at this point. So you can countervail, say, just one way you can think about it. I just noticed today that there's a number of major vaccines that have been depleted now. They're not available. Cholera is one worldwide. And so what you do is you think of livelihood. I'm not going to become a monk or nun, but I could become a biochemist. Or I could have a corporation, a pharmaceutical corporation. In my pharmaceutical corporation, I'm going to make sure that we generate medicines and vaccines that extend life, that heal, that cause people not to die early, instead of just going for profit on something that increases your sex life. I don't want to go into detail, but that is not only right livelihood, one of the Eightfold Path, but it also is a countervailing karma to killing and taking life. So you can think about this. I just saw this wonderful video. It's a YouTube video where these men and women, young men and women, they're young because they got to run. Apparently, the seals in the ocean can get caught up in these nets and hooks that are coming off of fishing and dragging nets and so forth, and it's really sad. Sometimes two of the seals get bound up together. They can't get separated because they're in this nylon netting, or they get hooks in them and they get infected. So what these people do is really cool. They have these huge nets, and they run along these beaches, and they catch these seals. It's a hoot to watch because the seals are trying to get away, and they hold them down, and they cut those nets off. They take those hooks out and free them. I mean, the energy of that is just wonderful. But that's another thing that one can do. So there's all kinds of ways you can think of, liberating life. For example, you can work on making health insurance available to more and more people, so that's not just a profit-driven industry. If you're not going into spiritual life. So there's all sorts of, if you think creatively. Well, my teacher says, when we think malignantly, we're just geniuses. We're geniuses. We can come up with all kinds of nasty, nefarious things to do, things unimaginable 20 years ago. Well, just look at AI or look at the web. I mean, what did I just discover today? AI, the ability to take a person's face and manipulate it so they look like they're doing all kinds of terrible things, and you just post it. I mean, so that didn't exist 10 years ago. It probably didn't exist 5 years ago. Now we can go out. I won't describe the actual detail because the actual detail is now violating the precept of sexual misconduct, because you're taking even children before they're 16 or 17, taking their faces, and then you have them. You can manipulate AI to have them doing all these terrible things, and then you post it online. So then their friends see it, and they're just obviously embarrassed. And it's causing a rise in suicide among the people who are embarrassed and humiliated in this way. So finding creative ways to do bad, we're really good. But finding creative ways to do good, gee, let me think, I can't come up with one thing. This is where you want to put your creative genius on that line and not on the other. Anyhow, so, but one I was going to mention, you can also bow repentances. So in the Dharma that's available, there are repentance ceremonies that you can do to consciously, not just go through the actions of bowing, say, I'm sorry, but from the deep inside out, repent and acknowledge and open that up. And then repent only works with the renewal. You could call it repent and reboot if you want to do. But basically what you're doing is you're acknowledging, getting it out, and then say, from now on, I will not do this again. That ameliorates karma in this life. So my teacher explained, he says, really big, disastrous suffering that was supposed to be coming gets smaller. And the small can fade away and even disappear. So there's active things you can do. In fact, they're doing a massive repentance ceremony now, right, Ken? What is it? The 10,000 Buddhas repentance ceremony at the city of 10,000 Buddhas. Interesting, 10,000 Buddhas, 10,000. Basically, that's just a lot. It doesn't mean actually 10,000. How many days?
1 month. It's starting Sunday for a month.
Starting this Sunday. So it starts this Sunday and goes a whole month. So you can think, you can go home tonight and you can kind of do an inventory. Well, my karma is here, my deposits in wholesome are here. My account's not, maybe I should go do a repentance for 1 week, 2 weeks, even if you go for a day. Just go up and, because you don't have to do the whole thing. Yeah, so this is something that you can do actively. It's heart cleansing, it really is, and it's karmic cleansing. If it's done sincerely. So take advantage of that. There's also something I like, and this is coming from a particular text. I hope I get the Pali right here. It's called the Avatamsaka Sutra. Translates means, well, Rahula, who's Rahula? That was the Buddha's son. So it's about Rahula. It's called basically Instructions to Rahula at Mango Stone. So Mango Stone is obviously a place where there was an assembly during the Buddha's time. Rahula was his son. I won't go into the long story of this because I think I've told you this before, maybe, no? Rahula is like 6 or 7 years old and he tells lies. He's mischievous. So it'd be like, say, Feta, you're Rahula and you're here at the monastery and people knock on the door and they'll say, is Jin Chuan and Jin Wei here? And you know they're up at the city doing the bowing repentance. You say, no, but they'll be here soon, maybe tomorrow morning. And you come, the guy knocks again at the door and say, oh, they should have been here. Why don't you leave their offerings you're making for them here and I'll take care of it. And basically, you do this. Or you say, oh, they're down at Redwood Vihar, you can find them there, and you know they're at the city. So he just thought this was really fun. He was doing stuff like this. The Buddha nailed him gently. No, really, it's a really wonderful psychological story about a parent and child, how they relate to each other. But then the Buddha at one point says, Rahula, here's a mirror. What is a mirror for? And Rahula says, a mirror is for reflection. And the Buddha said to him, the same way, and he gives him this, before you do something in body, speech, or mind, and while you're doing something, in the act of doing it, and after you do it, reflect. And he says, in the same way as a mirror, Rahula, bodily actions, verbal actions, and mental actions are to be done with repeated reflection. So he's saying, tune in, be aware. And he gives him, it's really cool because he gives him this thing. Before you do it, think, where's this? Is it basically for the well-being of myself and the well-being of others? If it's not, don't do it, don't say it, and don't indulge in that mental fantasy or whatever. If you miss it there, while you're doing it, ask right in the act, is this conducive to the well-being of others and myself? And you can feel, I'm just being honest, there's times I've done something, I didn't catch it at the beginning, but right while I was doing it, I knew it was off. And it's not too late to stop at that point. This is another way of stopping and contemplating, or contemplating and stopping. We might reverse it. But how many times have you been in a situation where you're doing something and you know, come on, you know it's not right. And you have a choice at that moment to stop. Take stock, pull away. If you miss it there, either consciously or unconsciously, after it's done, you can say, was this for? I wasn't sure, but now I can see that this wasn't. And he says, constantly reflecting before, while, and during, you will be able to get a handle on your karma. You'll get a handle on your actions. And he says, and eventually be proud and conscious, clear, not just to be a monk, but to be a good person. So this is from the Mango Stone text. Sometime we'll go through it. So the text then, what we're looking at here, Manjushi's asking, but why is it, and I'm quoting the text here, let me see if I can find. So this is Yebu Zhishin Shinbu Zhiye. Why, he says, the experience of karma unaware of the retribution. And why is the retribution unaware of the experience? Why is the mind unaware of karma and the experience unaware of the mind? So I represent, we look at this thing and it's pretty clear. It's not complicated. I mean, the theory of this is pretty straightforward. And yet, why is it that between the cause and the effect, we lose connection? We don't see it. To the extent that when the effects happen, we're nonplussed about how could this come about. Or we do something and we really aren't looking at where it would logically and naturally go according to cause and effect. I told this story once before, and I'll tell it again, and please bear with me, because it's so appropriate. I think I told it earlier and it wasn't the appropriate, but this one's really appropriate because it goes to this. Why is the experience of karma unaware of the retribution, and the retribution unaware of the experience? And I don't need the light tonight, because this one I can remember, so I won't have to look in the journal. This happened during the Bowing pilgrimage. And sometimes, make another observation here. Sometimes when you really resolve to move forward in a wholesome way, to cultivate, to actually bring forth the mind, the heart, it quickens the retribution. It can speed it up. And so things can happen more quickly than they would have if you hadn't made this resolve. Sometime we'll talk about this more, but Han Shan De Ching talks about it in his essay. It's as if these seeds, these bija, in the layers of consciousness, these karmic bearing seeds, are, I think of them as popcorn. Okay, sorry for they're popcorn, they're little kernels. And when you bring forth the resolve to go forward, you heat it up. It's heating up, and they pop sooner. Sometimes they're positive, and sometimes they're negative. So he says, be ready for this when it comes, because you're accelerating your momentum. And so that's why it says, when the way grows an inch, the obstacles grow a foot. It's this meaning, but it's actually, you're generating more energy here. So it's going to have if you can stay on and keep the reins, it'll work. In any event, when we were bowing, in many cases, lots of things came up that were in our sort of karmic bank account, came up faster and swifter than they would have if we hadn't been cultivating. And this required a lot of patience. I would hope was insight, but the insight sometimes was lacking. But here's a story of karma and retribution not recognizing each other. So we're on somewhere south, I believe, at this time of Big Sur, in that area. And we come to a little small town. Now these small towns, some on the coast, are 2,000-3,000 people, maybe big, sometimes only 1,500, just little, not even towns, we call them little hamlets, villages. I don't think you use hamlets here in California, do you? What are they called? Towns? Principalities? Something like that, unincorporated. And as we come into this, even the kids start to come out early. They come on their bikes and ask what we're doing, and they're like really nice. They're cute. They're cute kids. They say, "Oh, that's good. Yeah, the world. We need more world peace. Yeah, that's really great. What do you guys eat?" Well, we just sort of eat what's offered to us. You don't go to a McDonald's? No, we just eat what's. Well, here, take my school lunch. It's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and my cookies and whatnot. Oh, you guys, just generous. Local mechanic comes out. Anything I can do to keep your old car running? How's it doing? Let me check it over. A dentist comes out. You guys' teeth okay? I can give you free help and whatnot. And it was just one. Local ladies auxiliary group comes out with cookies and a pie. And the local police guy says, "Now be careful camping here at night, because sometimes there's bears and you don't want to be eaten by a bear. I know you guys are vegetarian, but we don't want the bear eating you, huh? Ha ha ha." And it's like, wow, it's just like coming home, gathered in, and we go through the town, and we go a mile a day, so it takes us about a couple of days to get through there, and on we go. And then 10 miles, 15 miles later, there's another similar town rolling into sight, and I'm going, aha, more peanut butter and jelly, a pie, this is great. And the kids come out, and they look at us and says, you SOBs, and they start throwing stones at us. Wow. One of them lets air out of the tires of a car. The policeman comes and says, you know, we have a no dwelling ordinance here. You guys can't camp here. You have to keep going. Nobody comes out to fix the car. Nobody comes out. I mean, people just look down at us. The rough and rowdies come and throw beer cans at us. It's just terrible. It's just, I couldn't wait to get through that one. So we're down about, 15 miles later, days later. Master Wah comes out. He usually comes out maybe, irregularly to pay a visit and give instruction and talk to us. And so he usually starts with, Zamayang, what's up? And we say, well, it's okay, but cheerful. This town, I was really perplexed by this. This town, blah, blah, we didn't do anything different. And the next town, we didn't do anything different, and they treated us like lower than rats. And here we're gods, and now we're rats. And the master said, you two don't understand, do you? Karma doesn't know its retribution. Retribution doesn't recognize karma. So he quoted this passage, and I said, what? And he said, in your past lives, these people in the first town, you were good to, you treated well, you were kind, you kept the precepts with them. And as a result now in this life, the corresponding good results come to you. He said the next town was just the opposite. These are people who you tied up negative affinities with through your actions, and as a result now, this retribution comes to you. He said in the first time, you don't recognize the retribution having the causes. And when you do the causes, you don't see how it could lead to this retribution. They're like two different things to you. That's why you're confused and don't understand. So he said, even though that's the case, you should be pingdang xin, means have a very level and equal mind. This is just cause and effect mechanically working its way out. You are not gods in this town. That's just the result, impartial, appropriate to your actions. And you're not rats in this town. Those are just the results, appropriate to your actions. So he said, don't go up and don't go down. Just see it with level and see cause and effect working. It's not off by a hair. So, wow. He said, so as you go forward, do not tie up any more negative affinities. In every move you make from now on, in your thoughts, in your words, even in your actions, don't create negative affinities with people. And if you can, keep it positive. And if you can't keep it positive, avoid it. But don't go into it. And then he said, every step you take from now on, be true. Make sure every step is true, and eventually this whole thing will clear up and you'll reach full awakening. But it was, pay attention each step. He says, don't look behind and don't look forward. Just every step you take, be true, and you'll arrive. Now, he wasn't saying you'll arrive at your destination, meaning the city of 10,000 Buddhas. He was saying you'll arrive at full awakening. But it was like very graphic, very real, and then his advice was just very right on and pragmatic. With people, don't create negative affinities. Don't return hate. Don't return anger. Let it pass. Let it pass. And then when there's a possibility for positive affinities, do it, but in the sense of benefiting them and not that you're going to get a return. Because that really isn't the benefiting. That's transactional. We got enough of that in the world. And then eventually things start to clear up. So that's the story I was going to share with you tonight. Next week we will go on. More of this. This is a wonderful chapter. I try to make this material interesting because sometimes we can just rush past it and just say, oh yeah, karma, yeah. But in terms of the actual details of our lives, the actual details of our lives, our experiences, our joys, sorrows, happiness, everything, it all is coming from this mechanism. So appreciating and understanding that mechanism, even if it's not necessarily evident, you can do what William James recommended in his pragmatism. Treat it as if it is true and see what happens. You don't have to prove it's true. But the proof is in the pudding with this kind of stuff. So I'd say try it out, experiment. Ehipasiko, try it out. Okay, any questions? No questions, really? Going once? I always think, if I ask a bad question, I'll get a bad retribution. If I ask a good question, I'll get a bad answer. Either way, I lose. What? A little louder, I'm sorry, because you're so far behind.
You said karma comes back, retribution comes back when we start cultivating, and I'm wondering why.
Why what?
Why does retribution come faster when you're cultivating?
Well, Han-chan's point is that you are actually reversing the flow of your karma by the good intention for Bodhi, and that good intention generates a kind of light and heat. It's a change in your momentum, your trajectory. And as you do that, the blessings, the goodness, all of this kind of works its way through. In some ways, you could see it as if you have a kink in a hose and you turn up the pressure, all of a sudden you'll feel it more until you break through, because you're increasing goodness, you're increasing cultivation pressure. And so these things that are obstacles now, just as when the snowplow picks up its pace, there's more resistance because it's now moving along. If it just sort of sits there, goes an inch a mile or something, it seems effortless. And as soon as one example is given, you're going downstream. You ever kayak or canoe? Okay. Yeah, paddling, okay. If you go with the flow of the stream, wow, it is cool, right? Woo. And you reverse and go back, all of a sudden the resistance. So the same thing, if you go with the flow, you turn your back on enlightenment and go with the dust, really easy. But you turn your back on the dust to go for enlightenment, you're going against the current. Now, how much current is there depends on your karma. It could be very light current, and you can turn around and say, oh, that was easy. I just went to a session. I took the 5 precepts. I think I'm going to maybe shave my head or something. Yeah. And somebody else goes, and they go, God, that session was unbearable. Oh, it was terrible. I'm not going to do any more. And it's not the session. It's your karma. So your interpretation and your experience of drawing near, even to the way place, is karmically colored. Anger is karmically colored. It's not just it's arising in somebody and not in others. It's a cumulative formation that's being made by body, speech, and mind actions. It's really powerful. So not only is the world you live in, and whether you're in a nice environment or not even your body, but your very emotions, your emotional matrix, so to speak, is also karmically formed and flexible. The key point here is that flexibility. You have the possibility of changing that. But you should expect that when you resolve to do something good, you're going to, let's say this, I'm not going to do this for a week. You make your New Year's resolution. I don't know what it is. I'm not going to eat this. I'm not going to drink that. I'm not going to, send these nasty emails. Okay, and then the first day, whoa. Second day, really hard pushing back. So this is a very human experience. Habit energy, shichi it's called, is what rolls us along. We don't realize we're just coasting on habit energy. Most of what we do is habitual. And so when you try to get a handle on it and change that, there's a resistance to it because it has served you well. It has served the ego well, and it doesn't want to part with these habits. This is basic human psychology. So in spiritual cultivation, it's no different. It's the same. Maybe the plateau that you're playing on is a little different, but the same principles apply. Why do they apply? Because it's human psychology. It's not magical spiritual stuff. Buddhas come from working on their humanity. When humanity gets more and more refined, Buddhahood accomplishes itself. It's not like it's something that's coming magically from some karmic thing. So you got to work on it. And as you become a better person, as you work on this kind of thing, it all starts to happen. So that karmic thing that Han Chan was talking about, that's human. That's not magical or mystical of another realm. It's just, you know, yeah. The cool thing is it can be done. Cool thing is it can be done. It's not over. What's it? It's not over till the fat lady sings. It's not from a sutra. It's from something else. Okay. No other questions?
Well, question online.
Okay.
How can the six senses be freed from the six sense objects more quickly?
How can the six senses be freed from the six sense objects?
Yeah, more quickly.
Don't glue them together in the first place. I'm not being facetious here. When the sixth patriarch says, let the mind be unattached, clinging to nothing, he's saying the natural state of the mind is to be unattached. But it takes effort and confusion to go out and attach to things, when in fact we know we can't attach to them. This is the funny thing. We go ahead and try to attach to it, and we know damn well we can't attach to it. And yet we keep trying. Now what did Einstein, I think it was Einstein attributed saying, doing the same thing hoping to get a different result is a kind of insane, and yet that's what we do. Love. We go out, oh, I'm gonna, everything is, I just find Mr. and Mrs. Perfect. Go out, it's like, boom. Do we learn? No, we go out and keep doing it again and again and again. Sight, sound, smells, taste. We think that they're going to bring this, that we can get them, we can own them, and we can't. So I'm not trying to, it's a really good question, but the answer lies in not to attach in the first place, to, in a sense, catch yourself before, because, here, let me quote the Avatamsaka. In one passage, the disciples are asking the Buddha about, should we break our attachments? And the Buddha says, no. What? Aren't we supposed to break our attachments? And the Buddha says, how can you break something that you can't attach to in the first place? It's not possible to form an attachment. It's a canard, it's a hopeless effort. And that's dukkha. Never getting what you seek. Never getting what you seek. So all of the sense objects are basically like chasing bubbles and shadows. I don't know if that helps answer it. But the important thing is to remember we are not originally attached. Secondly, we cannot attach by the very nature of impermanence. Therefore, making attachments is an illusion. It's not real. And therefore ends in dissatisfaction, frustration. Always trying to get things that cannot be gotten. All that's conjoined separates. The study of this, if that person who asked the question wanted to look in the Shurangama Sutra, there's a wonderful passage about this activity of how to separate from the sense objects and the sense faculties, how to do that. And one of it is called, the Guanyin is saying on ears and sounds, you return the hearing to listen within, and that's the methodology that's talked about. But simply what it means is you don't go out to attach. You don't return, you simply don't go out to do it, and it returns by itself. So this is, yeah. I don't know if that's a good answer, but is that it? Good.
If chanting and practice, the question is, if chanting and practicing generate merit, how can one avoid using it to harm or oppress other people?
When I mentioned before, the key to karma was cetana, intentionality. So merit, virtue, all of these blessings are the result of intentionality. If the intention is pure, even if the chanting misses a syllable or two, it'll be efficacious. If the intention is not pure, even if you got it down to perfect pronunciation, it won't be efficacious. Iche wei shinzao, everything is made from the heart mind alone. So where there's a true heart, there'll be true response, and where the heart is not true, even though the mantra or the chanting or bowing is, quote, right, the result will be crooked. Again, Shurangama, when the ground of the mind is not straight, the fruits will be distorted. Okay. Transference? Mine, I want it mine. I transfer it all to me. No, here's your chance to sort of send out whatever good energy from the sutra tonight to others. You can include yourself. It's not like you say, not me, but me and all beings, something like that. Any announcements, Ken? Besides the bowing repentance, which starts this Sunday? The monks won't be here then for these days because they're...
Yeah, they'll be there till Friday.
Anybody know what the schedule will be here? Heng Sure will still be lecturing tomorrow night from Australia. But I'm not sure what the daily schedule will be here since they're up at the city now doing the ceremony. We don't know.
Just check the website.
You want to know your karma? Check the website. Okay. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Bow in respect to the triple jewel.